Welcome to Tell the Damn Story, the show that explores the many ways to navigate the successes and failures that aspiring and struggling writers face to make your journey that much easier.
Hey, how are you? Welcome to Tell the Damn Story. Chris Ryan, and today we're going to go back to the future. Not talking about those movies. We're going to follow this guy, Alex Simmons, into his Alex Simmons time machine in order to talk to you about how you are going to create the future of stories. And here we go. What's up, Alex Simmons? And welcome to Tell the Damn Story. Oh my God, how are you, oh creator of Blackjack and writer of IP everywhere and teacher of film students and smeller of kneecaps?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not supposed to tell about that part. I'm sorry.
No, I told you not. Those things, what we talk about in the green room stays in the green room.
Hey, you know what? It is what it is.
Aside from the fact I keep losing my hair thanks to this thing. But anyway, hi, Chris. How are you? Chris Ryan, who, by the way, folks, he gives me these wonderful intros every single episode. And I fall on my face trying to do that for him. Not because he doesn't have the material, but because we got to get into the show and I'm embarrassed and all that. But let me tell you right now, I am putting on the brakes for just a quick second here and tell you that if you have not picked up Chris's book, it's been a privilege. You have not had the privilege of seeing one of the best things this guy has ever written. It is creepy, it is incisive, it is creative, it is unique in its voice. I not only think you're going to enjoy it, I suspect strongly you're going to be amazed by it. So please check that book out. That's my endorsement.
Thank you very much, Alex. I read a couple of pieces of that on Galactic Terrors, which is still available on YouTube. And I'm going to read a couple of other selections from that in a new podcast called Horror Words. I'm doing that recording tomorrow. I'm not sure when it'll hit the YouTube ways and podcasts, but anyone who's not sold yet from that sterling endorsement of Alex Simmons, one, shame. Second, you can look at those two places. And a matter of fact, if you go to my YouTube page and my social medias, you can scroll through, you'll see a couple of me going. And those, if I'm looking right in the camera, I'm probably reading a poem from you.
Yes, you are. Yeah. Yes, you are. Now, it is funny because some of that leads very nicely into what we're here to hear. Let's try that again. What we're here to talk about.
All right.
We're going to discuss, folks, what is the greatest challenge that holds back creative writers? The thing that keeps so many of us emerging, struggling, established from taking those steps forward that could exponentially improve our writing experience, our writing material, all of that. The one big thing that gets in the way of anybody along that strata. That's what we're going to talk about today. And in doing so, if you hang around till the end, you will more than likely walk away with a thought that might save you from suffering from this malady yourself. Or certainly, if you are suffering from it, might help you recover.
Said, sir. Yeah. I can't wait till the end. I'll tell you that much.
You're going to have to. So there. Okay, so here we go. Seriously, folks, here we go. And we're going to do it through what Chris likes to laughingly refer to as my time machine. My
Rose got one.
When you've been around a while, you get to do that, right?
It looks like a 57 Lincoln Continental convertible.
Yeah, but it comes with cup holders, so we're good. Okay. So here's the thing. Chris, I want you to take a trip with me. Everybody else too, but Chris
dude, I'm so down. Oh, now that I got a trip. I'm sorry.
Wow. Talks about his past. 1869. When I say 1869 to you, what do you think of?
being 18 and oh no, the I think of your childhood actually.
No, I was earlier than
1869.
that.
You were probably about 10 or 12, and 1869, the Civil War was 1865.
Okay.
The first member of my family came over somewhere between 1865 and 67, but the world was completely different.
Hot dog. As a matter
Nothing
of
that
fact,
we take for granted now
mhm,
existed back then,
that's right. Here we go.
except maybe pants.
A big, two big things I'll mention. Two particular things. One that deals with somewhere else on the globe, which in this case would be Panama. The Panama Canal opened up in 1869.
Yes.
Okay, so that's a little global thing.
Don't
There
say
was
that too
un-
loud.
yeah,
Somebody will get all angry about it.
hey, that ain't my problem. Somewhere in the world at that time, unfortunately, there was unrest and troubles and war and battle, and unfortunately, we don't seem
My, how
better with that.
times have changed.
Yeah. Oh, yes. So much so. But here in the United States, the big news was that the transcontinental trains met in the middle of the United States.
It was beautiful.
That's right. They built.
He brought flowers. She brought a coquettish smile. Wait a minute.
Yeah, no, we're talking about a completely different trans. Anyway, we had the tracks laid from Chicago from the east all the way to the Midwest, and from Sacramento, California, all the way to the Midwest. Boom. And they met on the same rails, side by side, or actually nose to nose.
How did they know to do that, Alex?
Mapping, man, genius. And 6 years of work. Six
But
years to
but
build.
while they were going, how did they keep in contact?
Funny you should ask. They had
Funny.
these sticks. And they would beat trees. No, they would cut down trees, put up these giant poles, and string wires. Wow. Thin little strands of wire from one pole to the next, so that in certain little places, little shacks all across the country, someone attached to some of this wire could go tickety tick on a little metal box, actually a little wooden box
Telegraphs.
or a little wooden pad with some metal units attached and tap out in code messages. Telegraph. That was communication. No cell phones, no even regular phones,
No, no, no.
just Morse. And that means that you would have to go in, speak to this person, tell them what kind of a short message you wanted to send, and then they would, in code, send that message along the line. This was technology. Choo trains and wire was technology in 1869.
And when they finally connected, they were able to bring mail across them
That's right.
ship across. It was a real big deal that we don't realize.
Because prior to that, you had horses and stagecoaches and things like that. That was how people traveled.
At a certain point, someone connected to rail travel had to say, what if we built one right across the country? Not, this is how we'll do it. Not, here's all the answers to all the problems. Just, what if?
Yeah.
And
Those
that,
are
ladies
key
and gentlemen,
words. Those are two key
golden words.
Yep, two key words. So now, looking at 1869 and understanding, again, the limitations of technology at that point, there was a writer. There was a writer who decided, okay, that's traveling across the land, but we also have a planet that's mostly water. And yes, we have sailing ships and boats that can go across on the above the ground, above the water. But what if we could travel beneath? And this person, without any scientific background, conjured up a story, which is still considered a classic to this day, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. This is Jules Verne.
Jules Verne.
Now, it's interesting. I would qualify this by saying he did not invent the submarine. There were prototypes, and I think it was like, oh my goodness, I think it's 16 something, 1658. There was a prototype design made, or 1570 was a design made but not constructed. And then in 1863, there was something that was made like a canoe with a wooden canopy attached to it, was created so that someone could go into the water with oars and travel a short distance. But that was it. But here, Jules Verne envisioned not only a submersible, a submarine that was huge, could travel underwater, could stay underwater with air filtering systems and all of that, and then understand how a crew on such a vehicle could come up to islands wherever they were, get the produce and things that they needed, be able to store those things on board this unit, and continue their underwater travel to save the environment. This is all 1869. So that's one.
Might be 2069 as well, but real life.
Okay. So let's actually, I'm going to do this sort of out of order. We did 1869. I'm not going to jump forward to 18, let's say late 1800s. Let's say 1895.
Sure.
Now, Jules Verne was in Paris. He's a French author, right? Now we're going to go to England and we're going to meet H.G. Wells. And this man, at that time, conjures up several different remarkable fictional stories.
Science fiction, yeah.
Science fictional stories. One of them being The Time Machine. Now, again, 1869, now we're in 1895. So we've come a few years, but we don't have time travel. We have telegraph systems that's much more efficient. We have, I believe at that point, we did have a cable that went, and I may be wrong with that. So not being a master historian, let me step away from that. Let me just say that the limitations at that time still involved a lot. We did not have a way of broadcasting. We did not have a way of breaking time barriers. We did not have a way of soaring through the sky at great speeds. 1895. And he comes up with a premise for traveling through time. And if one could travel through time either forward or backwards, what would we see? What would be involved? What kind of controls might be necessary to make that possible? The Time Machine, a classic. He then goes forward another year and creates something else that was again considered science fiction, where he decides, I don't know what he knew about light refraction, but there had been something called by that time the X-ray machine, right? Science had actually used an X-ray machine. And so Jules Verne looked at this and thought, we are able to see through the skin and see the organs beneath. What if we could see through a person completely? What if that person were absolutely invisible to our eyes? How would that happen? What would it take? And he began to think along the lines of not only an apparatus that might help cause that effect, but also what kind of chemicals might be involved, might be necessary to bring about that experiment and the end result being invisibility. Again, 1895. Then we'll go to 1898. Once again, we don't have master jets. We don't have huge communicational systems. We do have telescopes to some degree. We do know about the stars. We've known about that for centuries. But in terms of humans communicating with another world, not necessarily. Few people believed in that. And yet, the same author, H.G. Wells, comes up with the premise of an invasion from another world. And he worked out the mechanics of the apparatus that they would need to do it and how they would move along our Earth, unfortunately doing much damage in trying to conquer us. And what I find very interesting is what he used to destroy the quote-unquote enemy. And you remember what that was?
If I remember, it was Philly cheesesteaks.
Exactly, yes. So when they reached Philly, it was a particular cheese. It had to be American cheese. Our weapons weren't of any use.
No.
I mean, whatever you may think of what we have now, we didn't.
Right,
we had
right.
cannons then. That was about it. We had pistols and cannons and nitroglycerin and dynamite. But none of those had any effect on the Martian invasion. So the humankind was basically losing.
Sure.
Do you remember what took them out?
It was something really simple.
Yeah, germs.
There you go.
Yeah. biology.
If I remember correctly, Columbus used the same thing on the Native Americans.
But he didn't. He came in a different ship.
Yeah, it was a
Yeah,
different
right.
shit
Different ship.
and equally unforgivable. Yeah, the one thing that they did know, they were starting to make headway into medicine. And
Hmm.
HG said, yeah, they
Well, by this
wouldn't
point,
be immune. And it was a simple idea, although completely unrelated to Mars, to alien invasion. This was what would have been a summer tentpole movie, but was a blockbuster book at that
yeah,
time. And it was that great idea that nature, you
yeah.
know? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
again, again, as they would put it, man, but I can rephrase it to be humankind. We're not as powerful as we like to think we are. And sometimes it just basically comes down to what Earth, Mother Nature, the gods, whatever you want to call them, the things they've already established are far more powerful.
Yes.
It's
Now,
an intriguing concept.
so how do we tie this in
It's a good
to
question.
today's writers?
It's a good question, but I'm going to throw
Oh,
one more at you.
okay.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Yeah.
strap in. We're still in Alex Simmons' time machine, and that guy is taking a turn on two wheels.
Right.
Here we
Because
go.
we're going backwards now. We went
Ah,
1869 to
over my neck.
1895, 97. Now we're going backwards to 1818. Yes. And we're staying in Europe. Another time we'll do something else, but this time we're in Europe again. And we're with a person who thought to herself, what if scientists decided that the greatest mysteries of life could be solved if mankind could create life? And
Yep.
so he decides to do exactly that, but not through conception and raising a child per se, but through taking body parts from several different sources, stitching them together, constructing a man, and then once all the organs and things are connected, taking a brain from another source, another human being, and placing that brain within the skull and connecting all of that so that once this husk became living and breathing, he could train it and take it forth to say, look, I have created life. This is possible. And if you think about the operation, again, 1818, at the
Mm-hmm.
time when there was no anesthetics, there was no sterilization, operations in medical facilities were often performed using tools, not surgical tools per se, tools, right? Where they bled you if you had a fever, right? There's all this other craziness, right? Not only does this person decide to stitch all these body parts together and put in a brain and all that, but decides in order to reanimate the body would need an electrical charge. And so he rigs, because we don't have ever readies, he rigs up an apparatus that then, attached to wires, there was those wires again, would pull a Benjamin Franklin. And when lightning struck a particular antenna, send the charge down through the wires into this creature, and those electrical charges would re-stimulate life into this creature. Now,
Oh,
once
pretty
again,
exciting Thursday.
yeah, yeah, and what a hangover on Friday. But once again, this is a woman at a time when women didn't have the right to vote, when even if you were 14 or 15, your parents could give you off to a man who was 55 to be his wife. You had no legal rights. You couldn't own property. But this person, this woman, Mary Shelley, conceived of and wrote this remarkable science fiction story, which could also be considered a horror story, Frankenstein. What
She
if?
unknowingly, unwittingly gave birth to an entire genre, and all of this was based on a something to keep busy during a stormy weekend. And she beat out the two guys that were also writing. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about the big break. It wasn't about the career.
Yeah.
It was the
Wasn't about the book
simple
tour. Yeah. Yeah. And the
act
movie deal.
of creating,
Yeah.
just trying.
Now, you asked me what ties all of these elements together
Yeah.
and actually addresses the question or the challenge that I brought up at the very beginning. Each one of these people lived at a time when they did not have a societal stimulation of the kind of material and vision and technology that would have been necessary to pull off the things that they conjured up. They weren't raised, Jules Verne was not raised thinking about submarines and things like that. Did not see jets streaking across the sky and think about, oh, I could fly to the moon. Let me write that story. H.G., Mary Shelley, Mary in particular, was not brought up being trained to think this way so that she could go forth and not only conjure up these ideas, but then make them manifest. And yet, each one of them did because of the one thing that they beat out that gets in the way of 99% of the writers as they face the challenge of a blank page or a blank screen. And that is that we don't necessarily believe, we don't necessarily allow our imaginations to run free. That when we ask the question, what if, and we come up with an inkling of an idea, instead of going, great, let me see how that looks, many of us go, oh, that's probably stupid. Or that probably won't work. Or my family's always telling me such and such. Or I don't know if I'm really going to be a writer. I don't know if I'm good enough. I don't know this. I don't know that. We begin to beat ourselves back and beat ourselves down or get in the way or block or stop before we've actually had a chance just to play with the imagination and the possibilities that are thrown out there in front of us. That gets
Yeah.
in writer's way almost all the time. And I use these three writers as an example of what happened, not what could happen, what happened when they didn't let that stop them ultimately.
Well, definitely. And I guess the thing that I would like people to take away with it, to take away from is that we have so many reasons not to believe in ourselves. We blame, we don't have the right education. That wasn't something that they could say. These people weren't trained to be writers. They wrote. It's been done already. They didn't spend time pondering that. It wasn't the big, how am I going to get Scribner to notice me and all that sort of stuff. All of them wrote the stories. And then they went to see who might be interested.
And in the case of Jules Verne, you're right. In the case of Jules Verne, his story, which I cannot pronounce it properly in French, so I won't embarrass myself, was told in installments and published in magazines in installments before it was ever combined into one volume.
At that time, there was a much bigger magazine appetite for magazines. Now there's appetites for e-zines. There's a lot of Reddit sites are for writing. There are whole communities that
Medium.
support all that stuff.
Medium, rather. Yeah.
Huh?
No, I was thinking Substack, Medium. There's some other platforms that, that support that.
There are people who might be listening and say, "Oh, but if you publish there, then the big companies won't look at you." You make your own decisions. If you want to go for the big companies, start. Brian Keene is a legendary horror writer, but I think one of his most important contributions is that he continually talks about process and about how he does it and how he did it and all that sort of stuff for Tell a Damn Story, for those people to take what they need and move on. His thing was he always wrote a list of target markets, and he would get the biggest, most impossible markets at the top of the list, and then progressively smaller markets. And that was the deal. He would never let his ego get into it afterwards. He would start at the top of the list, get the rejection, start the next one, rejection, next one, until he got a sale. And that's really fantastic logic. Too many of us today, and oftentimes I'm including myself, you get a rejection, you're like, wow, I really suck. But no, there could be someone messed up this guy's editor, she or her, him. Could someone at the deli could have messed up their sandwiches and they're pissed and they click the next one and they're like, ah, and they never give it a try. Or, this has happened to me a couple of times. Yeah, I love the story, but we have two others for this issue that are similar. Those things happen, or it's not quite a fit for us. Sometimes they perceive it in a way that you would never have. Someone said a crime story I wrote. They said, for us, it's a little sexist. And I looked, I think I changed 2 sentences. That was the only thing I could find that had gender in it at all. So you send it to the next guys, whatever. But tying Jules Verne and H.G. Wells and Mary Shelley to writers of 2025, the core thing, the most important two things that they did is, one, they sat down to write. Oh, who knows? Maybe they wrote standing up. I don't care. It doesn't make a difference. I'm going to put in time for this for the sake of writing. They didn't write, this is how much money I'm going to make, or I'm going to win this award. They said, I want to do this. And then they said, what if? And those are the only two things that any writer at any time needs. Anything on top of that is whipped cream and cherry. Oh, I want to give it to a sensitivity reader to make sure I don't have. That you can do. That's fine. But that's not the core of your story. The core of your story is whatever you're writing about. Making sure that it's representative. If that's what you feel is going to be the key to the story, then go ahead. The other thing that they did is they were willing to rewrite. They were willing to put in the work to make it ready to go, to make it feel complete. So many people, they read these classics or they read a current bestseller and they're like, oh, look at these people. They're so much better than me. It just pours out of them. No, it never pours out of anybody. Sure, you might get a quick draft. I tend to write pretty quick, but the rewriting is where it goes from the hell was that to, hey, that's a story, or oh, that touched me. That's rewriting. That's the secret. That's the gold. Being willing to embrace that as part of the process. No one, maybe they do. Maybe they think that people start dancing and they're masters at it. That's not true.
Gene Kelly came out of the womb.
Sports, not no. They put in so many hours. Anything you want to do. You want to be a bricklayer? I tell you what, when Tina and I got our first house in Jersey, there were broken bricks on the first steps, because when you're buying your first house, it's not immaculate. It always needs work, right? So I said, how hard could this be?
Some bricks. Oh, God, no.
So I got some bricks and I got some cement and I very carefully put it together. And Glorious loves me. Now that might defy all logic in the world, but she loves me. So when it was done, she was like, that's really well done. Now, her parents loved me, but in a more objective way. And when they saw it, they called a bricklayer they knew. And they paid for it to be redone. Rewrite. They sent it to a bricklaying editor.
Yep.
And that's my choice was to get insulted at it or to learn. All right, yes, it's everything. Everything is a skill that you need to work on to master. There is nobility in that. We got the new Soul Scream there. We're in production of that right now. And by we, I mean me, because the rest of the staff is laying around at my feet snoring right now. But I'm taking a lot of chances and all that sort of stuff. And one of the things I'm going to be doing, because it is a darker volume and it does reflect some
By
of
the
the
way, for
darker
those of you
things
who
going
aren't
on.
aware, Soul Scream is an anthology, a horror anthology series that Chris, as the editor and publisher, created, bringing in a number of other writers to write the material.
Yeah, we've published over 40 different writers. And this material is a little dark and I needed some hope. I happened to take a side gig at Teen Arts, Bergen County Teen Arts, and they asked me to read some creative writing from high school age kids and middle school age kids and talk to them about it. And I did. And in reading and preparing for that day, I read this one story about the last engine. It was this sci-fi type piece, but it had horror undertones. And it was sparse and efficient. And I heard myself use those two words. What if we offered to publish this kid's piece and we'll put it at the end as a source of hope? So there were a couple other pieces that I thought were, that one was the one that was thematically a best fit for Soul Scream anthology. But then there was one of pure teen angst. And I realized for them, that's horror, the heartbreak of adolescence and all that. And there was one or two others. And then there was this one that just made me laugh out loud. It's not a horror piece. It's a love poem to a certain, I can't even say, but it's the last piece of this issue. Because when I read that rather short piece, I felt like, wow, these kids are still free enough to create new, to ask what if, to take a chance on something that may not even make sense and then make it make sense. And that is the key of all that we've been talking about for, what is it, 370 episodes now or something?
Almost.
It's pretty close.
Yeah.
So that's the spine, the payoff of this episode is that's what we're saying everybody should be doing now.
Is taking that leap of faith, allowing yourself to play in your ideas, to conjure up what if, and then listen to what comes to you when you say, what if we this? What if they said that? What if that happened?
Yeah.
And play with it, use it.
And then when the obligatory doubt comes, because as well as I do, there's always that period of, wow, this profoundly sucks. Everybody goes through that. Even Stephen King threw Carrie in the trash.
And that's luckily, right. The wife rescued it.
Luckily, the wife rescued it and said, no, there's something there. Keep going. That's the thing. After you've asked what if and you have something on the paper, keep going. Yeah. If you think it sucks, the other key question is, what would make it suck less? Yeah.
And that's going to be
Okay.
another episode in terms
Yeah,
of how
but
to
I
yeah.
mean,
But I'm just
it's not
saying,
the
we're
end.
promising another episode on that.
When you doubt, that's not the end. That's just the beginning of
That's
the good
right.
stuff.
That's right.
Ask more. What if I do this? Would that make it better? Yeah, it's part of the process.
Yep. Yep.
There are. Oh, I wanted to mention that for those who think, but you had to go all the way back for those examples. There are no new ideas. Not true. Not true. Go see the Thunderbolts. Everyone said Marvel can't make movies anymore. This story is told in a really refreshing way that touches the heart. Andor. Oh, Star Wars is finished. Go look at the 2 seasons of Andor. You're like, there's not a lightsaber in this whole thing. And it's captivating. And then I just heard this morning, and I shared the cover with you. Let me just make sure I get it right, because I got it wrong when I pitched it to you.
Oh, you did you?
I called it by the wrong thing. There it is. 8 billion genies. So that's a trade paperback that's got the first 8 issues or whatever. And this person was said, yeah, I was down. There's nothing new. And I came across this. He says, and my heart was renewed. Now I'm going, full disclosure, I haven't read 8 billion genies yet. But to see someone that I respect react in that way, I want to read it. I want to see what are this new set of ideas. They're always new set of ideas. Sometimes it's a refreshing of old set of ideas. I don't know if you've seen it yet. I think it's on Peacock, but there's a show called Poker Face with Natasha Lyonne as the star. Alex, it's Columbo. Retooled, refreshed. She even gives us a little wink with some of her phrasings and some of the way, and there might be a little Route 66 in there too. We'll have to rely on the owner of the time machine to tell us that. But it is done in such a thoroughly modern way that it feels great. I was talking to T, she's got, Glorious. We're not allowed to say the letter. One of the things she does, she's a librarian aide, but she also has a reading group. And there are people with learning challenges. They all get together and they're reading somewhere on a 6th grade level or this or that. And they love it. They love doing the reading. It's slow and steady. They love having the treats, whether it's chocolate or popcorn or whatever it is and they love talking about it.
Excellent.
Fantastic. They're finishing up. I think they were reading Wild Robot. So they're finishing that up today. And then the next 2 sessions are going to be watching, because they meet an hour a day or an hour every session. There's going to be watching the first half and then the second half of the movie with popcorn and treats and all that. Oh, it's fantastic.
Of course.
And meanwhile, Glorious and the person she does this group with are going to be discussing what to read next. So we were talking while we were walking the dog, we were talking about it. And I mentioned that I had some experience with a Hardy Boys book way in the back of the day. And it was just tongue in cheek. There's a million Hardy Boys books. But I think there's room for either a reboot or reinvention of the Hardy Boys or a series like that. It's not going to be me, but a series like that for modern day. It could be like a Poker Face. What I mean by that is a complete reinvention that pays tribute to what was. Just there's a legacy thing connected with blackjack that I think would do gangbusters. We don't have to talk about it now. Yeah. It's a big secret and demand to know. But I think there's a huge market for that. And they need it. I was very thrilled today. Somewhere in this crazy ass country, they're going back to phonics. And as much as we just openly mocked phonics growing up, I was able to read partly because of the things that instilled in me. If that helps, fine. but it's not going to do it alone. It's hard to find books now. You have to go to Barnes and Noble or
It's
an
closing.
online joint.
Stores are closing.
Yeah, but we used to be able to pick up a newspaper, look at a stack of magazines, a stack of, or a rack of comics, a rack of paperbacks. Where are those things? And people thought it was great. We don't need them. We're beyond them. We're not. They made us better individuals.
So I'm going to go back to
Here we
what
go.
this whole episode was about, because that's a good place to end it in.
And my wandering around?
Yeah. Only because, again, it comes back around to
I digress.
where are the stories? They're with you. How do we get them? You give them to us.
Yeah, I think they're in your socks.
Get out of your way. Write. Tell your damn stories.
Tell your damn stories. Don't, if they say what's been told, then how would you refresh it?
Yep.
In what way can you tell that it's
and
never
it hasn't been told by you, which means
Yeah.
inherently it's going to be different.
What's behind here is Teal James Glenn's latest, Not of Woman Born. It's a sequel to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, released in the last 12 months.
There you go.
And it's fantastic fun. It's a doable thing.
So
you come up with your own ideas too.
Do it. Do it. Do it. That's what Chris is saying. Do it.
Tell your damn story.
Chris,
ask what if. Don't take no for an answer. If it sucks, ask what would I do to make it suck less, and tell your damn story.
And what else should they do, Chris?
Tell your damn story while you're pushing that like button and hitting that subscribe, and maybe buying Alex a cup of coffee.
Yeah, that would be nice if you bought us a cup of coffee.
I'll take tea. Thank you so very much.
No, that's all right. I'll drink it, but you'll watch me drink it. Have a good time, everybody. Take care.
Peace, everybody.